The market value of 5% of a premier artificial intelligence company is $42.6 billion, a remarkably precise price tag for federal indifference. It is Thursday, July 2nd, 2026. While San Marcos shuts its gates to data storage, the federal government is offered stock options, and the Qatari royal family provides a $200 million upgrade to presidential aviation. I am Lambert Woollingham, presenting the Daily Shear, where we examine the latest administrative maneuvers to see who is paying for the paperwork and who is simply changing the name of the debt. Let us look at how local administrators are attempting to build fences around their utilities and libraries before the state manages them on their behalf. The city of San Marcos has voted to ban all new data center developments within its boundaries, becoming the first city in Texas to lock out the technology industry's footprint. This decision follows public friction over the water and electricity demands of artificial intelligence facilities, with Governor Greg Abbott now calling for an outright ban in rural neighborhoods. This marks a sharp reversal for state leaders who spent a decade offering tax incentives to Silicon Valley, only to discover that data centers consume utilities without disclosing the math to regulators. It turns out that inviting the future into your backyard is delightful, right up until the future drinks all your water. The Travis County District Attorney's Office has dismissed all charges against former Williamson County Sheriff Robert Chody and Assistant County Attorney Jason Nassau. This decision concludes a years-long legal battle arising from the 2019 custodial death of Javier Ambler, who died while being filmed for a reality television show. Prosecutors cited a prolonged legal dispute over evidence as the driver behind the dismissal, leaving the former officials clear of charges. While the state's case quietly crumbles, it serves as a reminder of the difficulty in securing convictions for custodial deaths. The legal system apparently decided that when a tragedy is filmed for television, the footage becomes a matter of broadcast rights rather than justice. On the eve of the one-year anniversary of the catastrophic July 4th flash floods that claimed more than 130 lives in Central Texas, the Central Texas Community Foundation has distributed nearly $9,400,000 in direct, unrestricted relief to survivors. Unlike typical bureaucratic aid programs, these funds were given directly to families to spend on housing repairs, transportation, and funeral expenses. The distribution comes as regional recovery efforts remain slow, leaving many local families still struggling to rebuild after federal delays. It is a remarkable development when a charitable organisation decides that families are actually qualified to decide how to spend money to rebuild their own collapsed roofs. The Library Commission of Austin is pushing the City Council to formally designate the city as a book-safe harbour, establishing explicit municipal protections for intellectual freedom. This proposal is a direct response to the Texas legislature's ongoing efforts to restrict access to library books and enforce content bans across the state. Commission members argue that a local shield will help insulate municipal libraries and their staff from state-level censorship campaigns and legal threats. While the designation is largely symbolic, it highlights the deepening divide between local administrators and conservative lawmakers. If the state continues to search libraries for contraband nouns, the city's librarians seem prepared to declare their reading rooms sovereign territory. Residents in South Austin have formed a new non-profit, the South Austin Neighborhood Safety Alliance, to oppose plans by the city to establish a homeless navigation center near Interstate 35 and Oltorf Street. The neighborhood group is meeting with local officials and school representatives to voice concerns over public safety and proximity to classrooms. City managers have continued to push the navigation center forward, insisting that the facility is vital to Austin's decentralized shelter strategy. In Austin, everyone agrees that the unhoused deserve shelter, provided that shelter exists in a parallel dimension that does not share an exit with Interstate 35. The economic landscape remains a series of shifting agreements where the actual cost of doing business is constantly reassessed by those who hold the leverage. President Trump has refused to commit to a long-term 16-year renewal of the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement, letting the Wednesday deadline slip. The administration has placed the trade pact on a short leash, subjecting the entire relationship to annual reviews instead. This decision initiates a 10-year countdown toward expiration in 2036, injecting volatility into regional supply chains while the White House uses the threat of termination as leverage. It is a bold negotiating strategy that treats international trade not as a foundation for commerce, but as an annual subscription service that can be cancelled if the delivery is late. The newly installed Federal Reserve Chairman, Kevin Warsh, sought to project an aura of independence during his first major policy address, declaring that the central bank remains focused on restoring price stability regardless of White House rhetoric. Chairman Warsh noted that inflation risks have slightly cooled, though he declined to say whether the Federal Reserve would change interest rates at its next meeting. Trump continues to test the boundaries of executive control, having lost a Supreme Court battle over firing governors. For a deeper read on these maneuvers, the analysis by Wolf Richter at wolfstreet.com is worth knowing. Warsh's tough talk suggests the Federal Reserve is eager to show it can ignore political pressure, even as the markets remain deeply skeptical of its resolve. It is always heartwarming to watch a central banker pretend that interest rates are governed by mathematics rather than the political survival of the person who appointed him. Microsoft's gaming division is bracing for a painful structural reset under newly installed Chief Executive Officer Asher Sharma, who has warned staff of looming layoffs and potential studio closures scheduled for July 6th. The division is struggling to hit an ambitious 3% accountability margin, squeezed by high manufacturing costs due to a memory and storage shortage. To cope, Microsoft is testing a disk-to-digital feature that allows console owners to digitize their physical game collections, preparing for a future where physical discs are abandoned entirely. The transition underscores the brutal economics of the modern gaming industry, where legacy hardware margins are collapsing under the weight of component inflation. It appears the ultimate prize of the digital age is paying $500 for a plastic box that is no longer permitted to accept plastic discs. The parent company of luxury retailers Neiman Marcus and Saks Fifth Avenue has officially exited Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection, wrapping up a months-long corporate restructuring. The reorganized retail group emerges with a clean balance sheet and a fresh corporate identity, aiming to leave behind the legacy debt that has choked high-end department stores for years. While the executive suite remains publicly optimistic, analysts warn that renaming a debt-heavy holding company does little to solve the structural shift of consumers toward online commerce. Still, the successful exit offers a temporary reprieve for the iconic brands as they attempt to lure back big spending consumers. It is the classic corporate miracle where a company sheds its obligations, changes its stationery, and declares that the retail apocalypse has been resolved by a change of font. Alibaba has agreed to pay $600 million to settle a Department of Justice investigation into allegations that its platforms allowed illegal prescription drug sales. Federal prosecutors accused Alibaba of failing to prevent more than 80,000 illicit transactions, essentially turning a blind eye to drug traffickers exploiting its global logistics network. This massive settlement avoids a costly trial but requires Alibaba to implement strict compliance and monitoring systems. To understand the broader implications of these digital monopolies, the perspective of Matt Stoller at thebignewsletter.com is invaluable. In this case, $600 million is a substantial number, but it is also the sort of sum a global monopoly can pull from its couch cushions to keep its logistics network running without interruption. The theatre of national and global power continues to provide a steady stream of spectacles where the rules of engagement are rewritten on the fly. A federal judge has blocked a federal restriction aimed at curbing mail-in voting across the United States. United States District Judge Emmett Sullivan ruled against a United States Postal Service plan that would have allowed the agency to deny ballot delivery in states that refused to turn over their voter registration rolls to the federal government. Judge Sullivan declared the administrative tactic unlawful, stating that the federal government cannot use postal operations as a cudgel to force individual states into compliance on election procedures. This injunction represents the second time in a single week that a federal court has frustrated the president's efforts. It is reassuring to see that the Postal Service is still expected to deliver the mail rather than acting as an auxiliary security guard for the state's voting booths. OpenAI has reportedly proposed granting the United States government a 5% equity stake. This move is an attempt by Chief Executive Officer Sam Altman to ease mounting regulatory tensions and diffuse public hostility toward the artificial intelligence boom. Under the pitch, which would value the state's stake at roughly $42.6 billion, based on OpenAI's $852 billion valuation, the public would theoretically share in the financial upside of technology. The proposal is designed to convert the federal government from a skeptical regulator into a highly motivated shareholder. It is a masterclass in modern corporate diplomacy, offering the state a share of the profits to ensure that the actual laws governing technology remain entirely optional. President Trump has taken his first official flight on a newly delivered Boeing 747-8, serving as Air Force One, an aircraft that was gifted to the administration by the Qatari royal family. The $200 million jet has drawn intense scrutiny from ethics watchdogs, who argue that accepting a luxury transport from a foreign government violates the Constitution's emoluments clause. The White House has defended the gift as a routine diplomatic gesture and a massive cost-saving victory for American taxpayers. The flight highlights the administration's continued willingness to treat foreign state assets as standard business transactions, establishing a highly questionable precedent for presidential ethics. Apparently, the high cost of executive transport has been solved by simply outsourcing the presidential fleet to international donors who expect nothing in return but a favorable trade policy. Russian forces have launched a massive overnight airstrike against Kyiv, killing at least 17 civilians and forcing thousands to seek shelter in the city's subway stations. This assault, one of the deadliest strikes on the capital in months, came hours after Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky warned of a retaliatory wave of attacks. Ukrainian forces have continued to target Russia's domestic oil refineries with long-range drone strikes, aiming to disrupt Moscow's fuel exports and military logistics. As the conflict grinds on, both nations are increasingly relying on long-range strikes to inflict economic and psychological damage, leaving civilians in the capital to bear the brunt of the physical consequences. The Vatican has formally declared the Traditionalist Society of St. Pius X to be in a state of schism, excommunicating its bishops and priests after they repeatedly consecrated new leadership without the consent of the Pope. This decision represents the final rupture in a decades-long doctrinal dispute over the modernising reforms of the Second Vatican Council, which the traditionalist group has rejected since the 1970s. Vatican officials stated that the unauthorised consecrations left the Church with no choice but to enforce the ultimate canonical penalty to preserve theological unity. It is a classic bureaucratic resolution where a disagreement over 16th century Latin liturgy is finally settled by the oldest administrative tool in the book, which is turning off the keycard access to the sanctuary. Consider the humble plastic video game disc, currently preparing for its journey into corporate obsolescence. Microsoft is testing a feature to let you digitize your physical collection, a lovely way of telling you that the plastic circular object you bought is now merely a license to ask a server for permission to play. We see this pattern everywhere this week. In San Marcos, they are banning the data centers that would host those servers because the servers require more water than the citizens can spare. Meanwhile, the developers of those artificial intelligence systems are offering 5% of their equity to the federal government, hoping that a $42 billion gift will keep the regulators from asking where the water or the data actually comes from. It is a beautiful closed loop of modern administrative logic. You cannot build the data center to stream the digital version because the city needs its water and the federal government cannot intervene because it is currently calculating the quarterly dividend on its new artificial intelligence stock portfolio. We are rapidly approaching a state of total corporate harmony where nothing is owned, nothing is built, and the state is a silent partner in the system that charges you an annual subscription fee to look at a picture of a disk you used to own. The machinery of public and private administration continues to run smoothly, provided you do not look too closely at the gears or ask who is supplying the oil. We will continue to watch the paperwork pile up, even as the filing cabinets are converted into digital licenses. This has been Lambert Woollingham, signing off from a region where the libraries are seeking safe harbour and the executive transport has a Qatari registry, leaving the rest of us to wonder if our water bills will soon be paid in corporate equity. The day has been shorn until tomorrow.